We all know the 49ers have holes on their roster, but can they get everything they need in this year's draft class? Plus, I want something to happen to the 49ers that if it did happen, they would absolutely hate. We'll tell you what it is next. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera alongside Vish Kumaran. Vish, how you doing on this fine Monday?
I'm good as you can be on an April Monday, Rob. It's still kind of cold in Chicago. The weather still kind of sucks, but spring is coming soon.
The draft is coming soon. 17 days away, Vish. It's so close. I can taste it. Just like I'm going to be tasting a Chicago hot dog next week because I'm coming to your neck of the woods.
Lucky you. You get to be around in one of the best cities in the world. I hope the weather is decent for you. It's supposed to heat up by the end of the week. There's a lot of fun things to do. Enjoy.
I'm
and I'll
very
see you as well.
Yes, finally. You and then Jason Aponte are the last two members of the crew that I have to meet in person. So I'm working my way through the list. All right.
Anything I need to look out for? Anything that your warning signs you're not how you look on screen or something?
I'm taller than people think I'm going to be and skinnier.
How tall are you?
5'10".
I would have guessed 5'10".
Yeah. Well, Steph thought I was tall. Anyway, on tonight's show, excuse me, two things I want to talk about. First, obviously the draft coming up in 17 days. Second, the 49ers can be forced to be on Hard Knocks this year. And I am praying to all the football gods that is a thing that happens, because as Vish and I were talking through this today, I think there are so many things that would be fascinating to see from a 49ers perspective. But I want to talk to you about this specifically, Vish, about the draft, because every 49er fan out there says, hey, we can have a great draft. Look what they did last year in 2024. And you are the only person I could think of, or at least the first person I can think of, that has sort of thrown a little cold water on the draft class last year because, and correct me if I'm misquoting you, but you have said that the positions that the 49ers hit on are not necessarily the most important positions that a team needs good players at to build a powerhouse. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate. I feel like it sounds with more of a negative connotation than I intended, because any draft class with successful players at any position is a good one, just given the nature of how much of a crapshoot it is. And I think NIL and college transfers and everything has made drafting the hardest ever in 2025 than it's ever been. And drafting has always been exceptionally hard. But for me, there's two things now that we look at the 49ers current draft and we say they need to find premium positions, find a defensive line, right? One, Rob, I think we're going to see this overall. I've seen this point made by many, very smart analysts in the media. This isn't me breaking ground news, but drafts are getting shallower and shallower now that players can stay in college and make money, right? Before, you would get really good juniors who maybe would be a first-round pick if they went back for their senior year, but are a second and third-round pick because they're a little raw but very talented, but they're coming out because, the $1 million to $3 million signing bonus of a second, third, fourth-round pick is better than having to stay in school another year. Now, these guys can make $20 million in college. So the incentive of coming to the NFL is usually when they are the most developed and they're the best they could possibly be. So rounding out a really great roster with a deep draft is as hard as it's ever been, particularly in these premium positions where you need the highest and the best level of athletes. Those athletes are staying in school to try and come back and be a top 10, top 15, top 20 type pick. The other issue, Rob, is I feel like the 49ers have one particular part of their roster to address, and I think it's very difficult to address multiple starters and a couple of depth pieces in a front seven over the course of a singular draft, especially when you're looking for guys to play fast and instinctively right away. For me, last year's draft class was great. But I felt like it was a draft class that you saw positions that were automatically plug and play, if that makes sense, right? Like a guard in this offense, we've seen guys plug and play in this offense. We've seen a lot of different guards start in this offense, and Pooney is amongst the best ones. He's one of the most talented. But the edge rusher, that's been a position they've struggled to find throughout this tenure. They've now looking for it again. A pass rushing defensive tackle, that's something they've struggled to find. They got DeForest Buckner. Eric Armstead was there when they got here. That's something they've struggled to find throughout the entirety of their tenure. The off-ball linebacker next to Fred Warner, Greenlaw is the one guy they've hit on. Malcolm Smith, their initial signing, flop. Quan Alexander, their next signing after that, flop. So far, they're D. Winters, Jalen Graham, Flanagan Fowles. These guys have shown something in special teams and are hopefully type guys right now, not guys you know anything about. Winters being the most highest potential. And so you're ready to interrupt me, Rob, and I've gone really long, but that's where we are with the state of the 49ers looking at the draft.
Well, I just wanted to say they have had multiple opportunities to praise D Winters and sort of give him that starting job or acknowledge him as the starter. And they every time have been like, yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. Like they don't seem confident in D Winters either.
They hope. I think they hope. But it's not even like, look, I've been on record and the chat's getting after me here, and Kenny here is making good points. I don't think this run and hit off ball linebacker is the hardest thing to find, just because like the particular style of linebacker that they're interested in, first of all, not every team is interested in. Excuse me, not interested in. And they're looking for a guy that's a little bit undersized, that's super aggressive and looking to hit. Now, not everybody has Greenlaw's personality and toughness, and that's something I've basically underestimated probably the entirety of his career with the 49ers, and I was wrong about that. Like, that toughness really was infectious to his teammates and Warner specifically. But that aside, they should be able to find a guy to play this role. And I think with Winters, the hesitancy isn't anything he lacks physically, because he does fit the prototype of what they're looking for at this position. He just doesn't trigger and play fast enough yet for their liking, and he doesn't play assignment sound enough yet. And the thing
what's he waiting for?
And that's what they're not sure about, Rob. And I think that's why they're like, well, we'll see. And I'm sure they'll get another guy in that mix to compete with him for the starting job this offseason. But there's a lot of hopefuls on this team that way, that we have no idea about, that could possibly be guys that could contribute. Maybe not key contributors, but definite contributors. But there's a few scattered across this roster that, remain.
So what are those sort of building block pieces that you talked about? If last year's draft class was not, let's call it like the most vital positions, what does Vish Kumaran consider to be the vital positions?
Well, here's the thing about last year's draft class, right? The 49ers' vital positions, and Kyle Shanahan mentioned this, as you and anybody, you've mentioned this, I've mentioned this, they were covered. They had their highly paid defensive end, their linebacker, their two receivers. They were stocked up in every single spot. And so they opted to try and fill in at different positions because they hadn't had a good draft class in a couple of years, and they did extremely well at doing that. Now they got to go back into the well because they need a starting defensive tackle that's going to enhance their superstar edge rusher, and they need a guy who can push the pocket and stop the run. They paid money for Javon Hargrave. He was supposed to be that guy the last 2 years. That didn't necessarily work out for them, so they're back there. They need an edge rusher next to Nick Bosa. Not necessarily a guy that, is a dominant player, but they need a guy that can affect the quarterback enough where, one, Bosa can have a steady line to the quarterback. Two, they can have a rush plan that isn't just Bosa getting after the quarterback, that can involve other people having pressure, moving the quarterback into certain spots. If you look at their division, the rush plan is very important. Stafford navigates the pocket very well, but he's immobile. Interior pressure affects him. If you can find a way to get in his face, it's a problem. Geno, very immobile. He's out of the division. Darnold's here, athletic. But what do we know about Darnold? Pressure affects him. There we go. Another guy that you get people around him, interior pressure, it affects him. And then Kyler Murray, interior pressure has affected him his entire career. So Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, that plan of last year is now fully available. They need a run-stopping defensive tackle, a guy who can do a little bit of both. They have their backups in the Kevin Givens, the Evan Andersons of the world, and then they need a combination at edge rusher. I'm not 100% sure they're convinced on what Gross Matos can provide. They almost cut him this offseason. They need a guy who can get around the edge that they can trust to rush the passer next to Bosa, and then they need a guy who's going to start and play the big end on downs when they have to play this wide nine, because their run defense, Rob, it's not been talked about enough this offseason. We've spent so much time talking about a lot of things. Their run defense has sucked. Last year was terrible. We saw it fall apart at times the Super Bowl year. That needs to be fixed.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan said himself at the league meetings that they're sort of restarting with the run defense. They're basically building it from the ground up, and it needed it. I mean, anyone that watched it for any amount of time, especially at the end of the season, every week somebody was running for 100 yards. I think they gave up a 100-yard rusher in like 5 out of their last 6 games or 6 out of their last 8, something like that. It was brutal. So they absolutely need to build it up. I think that we look at this and we're like, there's no way that the 49ers could get all of the things that they need in this draft class. And I think that's true, right? There's no way they could emerge from this draft and have no holes. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to build a perfect team to get to the Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl, to get to the playoffs. A lot of teams have holes or flaws. Can they get enough is the question. Can they get enough to be a competitive team? Last year, they were not competitive at a lot of times. Can they get enough out of this draft class to be competitive? It's going to be difficult, but I think that they can.
I think it's possible. It's interesting to me because I think, as you mentioned with Kyle Shanahan saying they're going to start from square zero with the run defense, or did he say square one?
He said we're going to restart, I think was the word.
Okay, restart. See, I'm thinking in code still from this morning, and let's start from zero in code. So there we go for any programmers out there. But since they're starting from square one, I think the identity of this team needs to shift a little bit, Rob. From, hey, they should be more of a vertical passing offense next year with the return of Brandon Ayuk, with Ricky Pearsall on the outside. Theoretically, between Ayuk, Jennings, Pearsall, Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing, they should have the most amount of separation at the receiver position they've had under Kyle Shanahan. That should in turn make their passing offense much more effective. They should be able to run the football. Why? Christian McCaffrey is back. That should help the run game. It should help the pass game, throwing to him. Ideally, you have this second tight end. You have a fullback. You get in heavier personnels. You should be able to get good matchups for your superstar tight end who's still kicking ass. You throw him the football. So the offense, theoretically, on paper, if they're healthy, it should be good to go. They should come out. They should kick ass on offense, which means that they need to really get after the quarterback to close games, right? Let's take the run defense out of it. Let's think they're going to score on people and make people have to throw to come against them. So they're not even going to have to worry about, can we stop teams in short yardage or running the football the way they were in 2023 when they went to the Super Bowl? Well, in that scenario, Rob, do you think that they can get basically an edge rusher that can, create havoc with Nick Bosa and some sort of interior pressure in this draft? Is that a possibility?
Yes, but I think in order to do that, they need to go defensive line, or their best chance of doing that is to go defensive line with their first 2 picks. Unless they somehow, I saw somebody from Bleacher Report had an article that said that the Niners could trade for Trey Hendrickson while also doing a first-round pick swap with the Bengals. Basically, the deal was Niners give up 11 and 2 third-round picks, and they get Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals' first-round pick, which I think is 16 or 17. And if they do that, then, oh my God, then absolutely yes, because they can still get a good defensive lineman at 17, and then they would have Trey Hendrickson, who's had 17 and a half sacks for each of the past 2 seasons. But barring that, you've got to go D-line, I would think, with your first 2 picks.
100%. And the cool thing about that, and I'm not going to even pretend like I'm even close to even knowing anything. That was a lot of evens about this draft. But one of the things I've noticed is when you look at the mock drafts from all of the different experts, the guys at 11 and the guys at 17 seem to be in the same pool of guys. Like there can be a draft where the guy mocked at 11 for the 49ers is there at 20. And there's a mock draft where the guy mocked at 11 for is around that range. So theoretically, based on reading the mock drafts, it seems like 11 and 17 in this particular draft it's not too much of a difference, especially if you're adding a game-changing player like Trey Hendrickson, who led the league in sacks last year.
Mhm.
And I mentioned one of the things I really enjoy about Trey Hendrickson in particular as a compliment to Nick Bosa is the fact that the best thing he does is time the snap and bend the edge and get around and get the quarterback to step up. If you can shorten Nick Bosa's path to the quarterback and allow less space between Nick Bosa and the quarterback, he's very good at wreaking havoc and sacking the passer. The issue for Bosa his entire career is when there's a little bit of space, the guy wiggles and gets away from him. It
Mhm.
breaks the entire pocket and the play breaks down. So that initial pressure for Bosa, forcing the guy up into the pocket and collapsing the pocket around him is so important. Trey Hendrickson causes that. The issue, and Kenny nails it, is will Jed York pay the cash? That is a different scenario. But I love this trade, Rob. I love this for the 49ers. Just me thinking about this on face value, it sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I if that was I don't think they're going to be able to get Trey Hendrickson for a first round pick swap in 2/3. But if they could, they should absolutely do it. And then you've got a whole year to hammer on Jed York to try and pay Trey Hendrickson. But you absolutely should do. I mean, talk about jump starting your defense and this. They don't want to use the term rebuild because teams think if they don't use the word rebuild, fans won't realize they're rebuilding. The 49ers are absolutely rebuilding, whether they want to use that word or not. But that would absolutely jumpstart it. But either way, they're going to need to take multiple defensive linemen in the draft. When we talked before the show, I threw out the idea of, hey, if this draft is so deep at defensive line, maybe you don't go defensive line with your first pick because you can get defensive linemen later in the draft. Maybe you go with a corner because a lot of people seem to be mocking corners to the 49ers all of a sudden at number 11. So do you get the best corner in the draft and get your defensive lineman later on?
I mean, in theory, I think that would be a line of thinking. It's just never been the way the 49ers have gone historically. I think we've been at this exact draft conversation so many different times in my life cycle as a fan. Corner edge player in round one. And I'm always a big proponent of edge player over corner because the edge player can protect both corners. The corners can only protect one corner can only protect one side of the field. You can just not throw at him.
Fair.
Now, other people like Bill Belichick make the argument that you can do more with a corner that takes away a receiver and you can scheme up the pass rush, but you can't really have a guy that sticks with one receiver throughout the entire game. It's hard to find a Stephon Gilmore, a Darrell Revis, a Ty Law, etc. So it's a back and forth conversation. Personally, I would take the edge rusher. I feel like the Niners go edge rusher every time they're in this situation. And I feel like when you look at both depth charts, the cornerback depth chart, even if they didn't take a corner going into this next season, is fine. They'll be okay. The defensive line depth chart, it's not okay. They
Right.
need starters.
Yeah, that is scary. But another thing we brought up, like you always say, they always take the defensive lineman. It seems like it would be really hard for the 49ers to get enough players in this draft to sort of run the defense that they historically have wanted to run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great defensive line, great pass rush, that type of thing. Do they need to build it differently? Do they need to say to Robert Saleh, hey, you know what? If we do take a corner at 11, then you've got presumably a good corner with that pick. Renardo Green, your second round pick from last year. You've got Diamador Lenore, who you just signed to a fat new contract. Robert Saleh, we need you to build a defense that's centered around and built off of the secondary. And oh, by the way, you have a good safety in Malik Mustafa. And I don't know who the hell knows about Jair Brown. But like maybe you got to say to Saleh, this is what we have. You need to change your defense and build your defense to accentuate those strengths rather than trying to do it the same way they've always done it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just find it hard with them paying Lenore last offseason and then drafting Green in the second round. I understand most teams play three cornerbacks 95, not 95, like 60% of the time because they're a nickel. But given that they also paid Trey Brown on top of that, who I don't look at as a difference maker, but you know how they think because they gave him a little bit of guaranteed money. And so when I look at all of those little things, I just can't see them going corner at 11. And I think, Rob, the scenario should be who is the best player at 11 in a draft like this when it seems so confusing. But the 49ers have clearly laid out a plan that involves we're going to cover every other position we feel like we need in free agency, and we're going to attack this one position, or I guess this grouping of this front seven in the draft. And so when you hear them talk about their offensive line in the owners' meetings, when you hear them talk about any other position, it sounds like they're drafting a defensive lineman at 11, probably at the next pick and the pick after that.
If you say take the best player available, what if that's Ty Warren? That's who you think they should. That's who they should take.
Well, then it sucks that you just paid a tight end in free agency. Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know. I don't want them to do that. By the way,
if they take Ty Warren, trade George Kittle.
Woo!
But then that 10-year wall means so much something, right?
Oh no!
Right. And then here's my other thing with the tight ends early. There's this like weird draft theory. If you notice, the tight ends that often succeed in the NFL are the ones that are the George Kittle types. They're a great athlete in college, maybe did a lot of blocking, and then they become a receiver in the NFL. The super hyped up prospects, I know Bowers just killed it, but in our history, from Vernon Davis to Eric Ebron to TJ Hawkinson's a good player, but definitely not for what was invested to draft him. Kyle Pitts, all these guys. Usually that uber hyped up tight end doesn't live up to it because it's such a learning curve from what you do well in college to what you need to be able to do well in the NFL. And Warren, according to everybody, looks like such a great prospect, but so did every one of the guys that I just named. I mean, Ebron was can't miss. Pitts was can't miss. And so I always hate the position early because I feel like it's one of those positions. I mean, the Packers are going through it right now with the Musgrave-Kraft situation when Kraft is the better player than Musgrave.
Lionheart says, YouTube channel member says, side note from football, Vish, what happened to the beard?
It'll come back. I had a couple of family events and they made me shave.
Had to clean up nice for the family. I see.
Exactly, Rob.
How long will it
had to be a little respectable.
How long will it take to get that beard back?
I don't know. Maybe a couple weeks.
That's not bad. Trip Aces says,
Can you grow one?
No.
We'll grow one together?
I'm 40 years old. I'm still waiting for my first beard to actually grow in. Trip Aces says,
maybe next year, 41.
Trade back 11 to 15, then back to 27, get a bunch of picks in the second, third, and fourth round and crush the draft properly. You know, I feel like if you trade back, everybody automatically praises you. Belichick used to trade back every year, and they used to say, oh, look how smart Bill Belichick is. A lot of those draft picks sucked, okay? I'm not necessarily always an advocate for trading back. You know, Bill Walsh was trading back in one of his drafts, and somebody finally looked at him and said, Bill, if you don't stop trading back, we're going to have every pick in the 6th round. Like, eventually you got to pick a guy. So I'm not always an advocate for trading down. You're at 11, okay? You have a chance to get a really good player. You're not picking at 28 or 30 like they have. You have a chance to get a really good player at a position, an expensive position, and you have a chance to get a cheap player, Vish, for 5 years if you get him in the first round. I don't know that you should necessarily pass that up just to get more lottery tickets.
See, this is why I like doing the show with you, because sometimes I need that too, because I'm always a big trade back fan, because like I've mentioned, I like the conservative stockpiling of draft picks because I feel like it's an asset in hand, and it just agrees with my logical thinking of how I would imagine and accumulate assets if I was building an NFL football team. But also just looking at the nature, Rob, of these two people when they've drafted Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They've been very aggressive about going and getting who they want, and they've just stayed put usually and taken who's available. It's been very rarely that they've traded back, and the couple of times historically that everybody talks about has been just one pick to take the same exact guy that they were going to sit right there and take. And so that's their draft history, and I agree with you. There's not really a benefit to trading back unless you do what you were going to do, which is take the exact player that you were going to take anyway, right? Like the dream trade back scenario, Trent Baalke pulled it off, which is you trade back 10 picks and you still get Navarro Bowman. What a dream scenario. The rare good pick from Trent Baalke, right?
The Solomon Thomas trade. Remember when they traded?
Exactly. When you get Exactly. When you get exactly who you intended to take at the spot you were taking at, that's the only time trading back I think actually ends up working out. It's unfortunate because I love the stockpiling and taking of draft picks, and the idea of going to 11 to 15 to 27 is great. I think this is also just going to be a hard draft to trade back in because who's somebody going to trade up for? The quarterbacks? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I don't. Unless two quarterbacks go early and then does somebody freak out about not getting Jackson Dart? I don't know. Maybe that's a thing that can happen. By the way, Joseph is
Is Jackson's Dart looked at as a starting caliber quarterback?
maybe, maybe Joseph
Like, okay,
Ernberg.
okay. Can I ask you something? We
Yes,
stack traits, okay? Just stack traits on paper. Is Shador Sanders a top 20 pick in the draft and Brock Purdy is the last pick in the draft? We're stacking traits on paper.
I don't know. Honestly, I can't say. I don't know how good Shador Sanders is.
Brock Purdy is a better athlete than Shador Sanders.
Is he?
I think so. He has
Didn't
better
I think
feet.
Shador just ran a 4.52?
Wait, what?
I think so. Did I? I could have that wrong.
Shador
He
Sanders
had a
ran a
pro day.
4.52?
Pretty sure he did. I thought that's what it was. Anyway, I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, I I don't want to get into that discussion.
I'm putting that out there. Anyway, I don't think people are going to trade up because of that. How about that?
Joseph Ernberg says 40, you look 24. Best available for your team. First of all, that's the ego boost I needed today. Thank you for that, Joseph. Because I feel like I look every bit as 40. But anyway, I appreciate the compliment. I'll take it.
I think you look 40, dude. Gotta say.
All right. Well, there goes my smile. Anyway.
Dude, because if you look 24, it's a little problematic now that I've become 25. I'm just saying.
I see. So anyway, as we kick around these draft ideas, just different things pop into my head. But I really am kind of they already have 11 picks. That's more than anybody else in the entire draft. You really need to trade down for more. Just because you get players doesn't mean they're going to be good. And, like you could say what you want about Mike McGlinchey, the last tackle that they took this high in the draft. He was the 10th pick. They got good enough play from him for 5 years at below market rate for a tackle. I know he wasn't a Hall of Fame player, but especially when your owner's getting cheap, and clearly Jed's getting cheap, you have the opportunity to get somebody at a position that might normally be expensive if you tried to fill it in free agency, and you have the opportunity to get him for half a decade. So I don't necessarily just give that up. If I'm giving that up, I got to get a lot to trade back.
Yeah. The other thing for me is, by the way, Shiloh ran the 4.52, not Shador.
Okay, sorry. I got my Sanders confused.
Yeah. The other thing is for me, when you look at Rob, that Mike McGlinchey example, I think it's a great place to go because it's the last time they were kind of near this scenario.
Yep.
And what I think the pick is going to be is who Mike McGlinchey is. It's going to be a need. So I think it'll be a defensive tackle or edge player. The guy is going to be a prototype. Mike McGlinchey, if you look at prototype for what it means to be a right tackle for Kyle Shanahan's offense, Mike McGlinchey fits the physical requirements. He's big enough. He's athletic enough. He fits those physical requirements. One of the most insightful things I found about the draft last year came from Sean Payton on Colin Cowherd's show. He said that Bill Parcells used to say that if you're picking a guy in the first round, the guy has to be a prototype, which means that if you were going to pick a wide receiver, whatever you write on your board saying, we need a wide receiver to be these 5 things, that guy has to be those 5 things. And if he's not those things, he better have something that makes him super extra special that you can pick him. And his example was that they took Aaron Glenn way back when, who was an undersized cornerback, and they thought his feet were exceptional enough to make up for his lack of size. And so coming back to the example, in a pick, and you brought up how Mike McGlinchey was a 5-year starter for this team, in a pick that they basically cannot miss, I think that they're going to go for a prototype, which means I think they're going to go for a multi-year starter, upperclassman, a guy who's big, fits every physical requirement for the position, has production, comes from a big school. I think that's going to be the sort of guy that they're going to draft. I don't know who the guy is going to be. A lot of people have pushed out a lot of different names, but those are the criteria I would be looking at for them in terms of who they're going to pick, because I don't think they're going to be taking a risk. I don't think it's going to be an undersized guy or a guy with 1 year of production. It'll be multiple years of production, and the guy is a prototype for that position in terms of size, arm length, physical proportions. He will be that. That's what McGlinchey was.
And just because the guy checks all those boxes doesn't mean he's going to be a stud. But I see what you're saying, right? Like, these are the things we want. If we're going to pick a guy in the first round, he should really check all those things, unless, like you said, they can compensate in some way. I always looked at it like this. And again, I'm not a scout, never pretended to be a scout. I can't tell you if any of these guys are good. One of the things I love to do after the 49ers make their pick, especially if it's a skill player. If it's a lineman, sometimes this is tougher. But if it's a skill player, I love to just go to YouTube and let me look at their highlights. Give me their best plays. Maybe it's 10 plays, 5 plays, whatever it is. But if I can't see in those 5 or 10 plays something that makes me go, damn, then I get really scared. If your best
I usually see it, Rob. I've never not seen it. I'm not going to lie. They draft a guy. I'm thinking we're going to be putting the guy in the Hall of Fame, especially if it's a guy with the name. Like, remember when did they draft Fred Taylor's son, Kelvin Taylor? Like, Kelvin Taylor just sounded like a superstar running back from Florida. Will Redmond, the corner from Mississippi State, like Will Redmond wearing number 2 from Mississippi State, the way he moved. Like, that just looked like a superstar. So I'm always there, Rob. I get your point, but like, that's every player for me.
Kelvin Taylor, by the way, 6th round pick in 2016. Way to go, you. How about that?
Sometimes I got to flex.
One pick after Jeff Driscoll. That was the Chip Kelly draft.
Yes, it was. A Trent Baalke special, man. It's one of his best master classes. Produced Dante Johnson.
Who would go on to be with the team forever. That was the DeForest Buckner draft. They took him in round 1. Then they went back into the first round. They snuck in 28 and took Joshua.
Oh, God, not that guy. We don't want to hear about him.
Will Redmond was a 3rd round pick that year, by the way.
Torn ACL classic. Dude, I'm still waiting on Keith Reeser. When Keith Reeser recovered, oh, man.
That's what we need to do. We need to have a trivia of like who can name all the torn ACL guys that Trent Baalke picked. And whoever can name them all gets some sort of prize. I don't even know if I can name them all, man. Tank Carradine.
Dude, I'm telling you, if people like listened to like how I felt about these torn ACL guys, like as I felt about them in the moment, I'd be maybe people already think that, but like they would think like, wow, this guy's really dumb, because I was a Tank Carradine like guy. I thought it was a total steal. Like, I thought Tank Carradine would be like a top 15, 20 pick, and they got him at like pick 40. Unfortunately, he didn't fit the scheme, but like, I loved the concept, if that makes sense. If you can see, I'm a big asset accumulator guy.
Dude, Tank Carradine was pick 40 in 2013. My God.
Yeah.
You're on a heater right now. Look, I obviously am hoping that they pick good players. I'm a little nervous because some of the people that I've seen, like talking about injuries, Jahad Campbell, right? The linebacker from Alabama has a torn rotator cuff, had surgery after the combine, which by the way,
they have good communication, by the way, about that particular injury with Alabama and linebackers.
Because
Reuben Foster.
Oh, well, how about he just talks to George Kittle, who's been playing with a torn rotator cuff for like 7 years. I don't know how he does it. Get that shoulder sleeve that Kittle has on that apparently has magical healing properties. But no, I don't want any guys with like major injury histories coming off the injury like that. No risk. And I feel like the 49ers learned last year, go for a little more experienced guys, a little bit older. They were not scared of that. And then they were able to contribute early. They were able to come in right away and give them something, which has been a huge, huge difference. And these guys, whoever they pick, are going to have to give them something, and they're going to have to do it early because, as you said, they don't have enough bodies.
Agreed. And one last thing I just want to keep throwing at you about the draft. It's a deep running back draft. I have a feeling they're going to take a running back. Obviously, They don't have depth at that position. But with that first pick, if we're talking about, there's a lot of pressure on this draft pick. And again, I don't know. I've never really watched him, honestly, this year. Unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to watch college football, but everybody says G&T is this generational guy, this superstar. And we know what having an effective run game does for this offense. If G&T is this superstar runner and passing or the pass catching out of the backfield is not his cup of tea, and you pair him with McCaffrey and all of that, do you think that's a way they can go? Is that a possibility? Hey, we know he's gonna hit, he's gonna be a superstar. When we're able to run the football, our offense is friggin' unstoppable. Whether it's Debo, whether it's Mitchell, you know what I'm saying? Can they go in that direction?
Can you imagine the revolt that would take place if in the deepest defensive line draft, maybe in a decade, the 49ers, with their highest pick that they have had since Mike McGlinchey was drafted, went running back and pass up all those?
What if the next two are defensive linemen? What if the next 2-3 are defensive linemen? You're like, we don't feel like there's a surefire, like, I'm trying to think of scenarios with the draft, right? And what if you're sitting there at 11 and the two defensive linemen that you felt like, if we stay here at 11, we can start with those two guys are gone. And you don't really feel like there's another position you can go. If you have him as one of the 2 or 3 high profile, premium, can't miss players in this draft with Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, who will go in the first 3 picks, is that not a direction to go and say, look, we have so many defensive linemen ranked 20 to 60. Let's come back and stock up on a bunch of medium guys. We don't really know who to take. Let's take the one we feel like that's a guaranteed to be a superstar.
That is the exact logic that the 49ers would have if they made that move. Tim Kawakami has talked about this, how they view pick 11 as a premium pick. Like, you got to get a really good player at pick 11. And if there is no one on the board that they think is that guy, they won't pick there. They'll trade back. Or, like you said, they would take a running back if they thought that Ashton Genty was that guy, like Christian McCaffrey level player. If he was the only one there, maybe they would. God help me if that happened.
Look, his first pick, he took Solomon Thomas when he probably should have taken Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, he should have taken Patrick Mahomes.
Well, yeah, but I don't even think that's even in his line of thinking. Like, if he goes back and retros that pick, I think that's what would kill fans. He'd be like, yeah, dude, I had the right line of thinking. It should have been Christian.
So Kyle Shanahan gets the time machine. He goes back to 2017 and he gets Christian McCaffrey, and then he ultimately signs Kirk Cousins in free agency, and he doesn't.
If you had to guess, right? You also read Mike Silver's book, so you have like a better grip on his personality. If you had to guess, would his practical, logical mind think like that, or would it be, dude, I just had to go back in time and get Mahomes? I think he still looks back and thinks like, dude, no, I would have never thought of Mahomes. Like, that never made sense. It wouldn't have worked here. Like, if I got McCaffrey and Cousins, this whole thing would have been right. I just got stuck with Garoppolo.
If he hadn't lost 2 Super Bowls to Mahomes, maybe he would think that way. But I think the fact that the same guy got him twice, at least in his mind, he's like,
I don't think you would say it aloud, Rob.
Right. But I got to think in his mind, there has to be part of him that thinks if anybody else was at quarterback for the other team, we win.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but alas.
But I get this feeling he thinks, well, if I had Kirk at quarterback in 2019, I win. We made Mahomes play bad. He played bad in that Super Bowl. Yeah. If that was anybody else, they don't win Super Bowl MVP. But you got to sell the guy for the narrative. Face of the league. Learn something from it, NBA. There you go.
Honestly, we have seen Mahomes play way better games than he played in either Super Bowl, really. It wasn't like he was vintage Patrick Mahomes in either. He won, so we don't need to dive into it. He won. But anyway, so plenty more draft coverage to come. I'm actually not planning on talking about a Brock Purdy contract in this episode, Vish. How about that? I'm pretty excited about it. Although I am going to talk to Mike Florio on Thursday.
He had some
interesting things to say about Brock Purdy. So I'll talk to him about that. But the thing I want to happen to the 49ers that they would hate if it happened is to be on Hard Knocks. And they can be forced to be on Hard Knocks, which is the only way they'll ever do it, because Kyle Shanahan is on record as hating it. John Lynch is on record as not wanting to be a part of it. But the league can say, you're doing it. And I got to tell you, look, I produced sports talk shows for ESPN Radio, ESPN TV, NBC Sports Network, NBC Sports Radio. I feel like I have a pulse on what the national NFL audience would like. There are very few teams that to me would be as compelling as the 49ers Hard Knocks in 2025. You've got Kyle Shanahan, so kind of sort of on the hot seat, trying to rebuild this juggernaut. You've got Robert Saleh back in the building now. We know they famously butt heads. What do they do when they're together? Brandon Ayuk gets crapped on all off season by everybody from this organization. He's coming back. Oh, by the way, also trying to recover off a devastating knee injury. Christian McCaffrey's trying to recover. Trent Williams trying to cover. Oh, by the way, there's 11 rookies that are going to be walking through the door, including arguably the 11th pick in the draft. I'm telling you, the Niners
Ricky
on Hard Knocks,
Pearsall with the full off season. You can do
right?
an entire segment on his recovery.
Yeah, not being shot in the chest. Imagine that. Like, the Niners on Hard Knocks would be must watch, not even just for 49ers fans.
Yeah. Kenny nails it. I've seen one episode. I was very disappointed with the Gruden Mayock AB season. I thought that was going to be one of the, all-time great pieces of reality television. It was horrible. Now, if I'm thinking from a strictly television perspective, like, yeah, I really want to see the Niners on Hard Knocks. Like, I want to see the behind the scenes as a fan. I want to see the behind the scenes of these characters, all of that. But just as a fan, I hate the idea of it. Hard Knocks is like the ultimate bad juju for a team. I think it's too much access. Nothing good ever comes from that much access. Now, I think the Niners would be one of the worst teams on Hard Knocks because I think they would go out of their way to try and be boring on Hard Knocks, which is a good thing, bad for TV, but it's also a good thing. I still would like to see it just from a TV standpoint. I hope it doesn't happen, though.
Oh, I hope it does. Like Brisbee Life says, maybe we can get the Madden cover curse again to go with it. Maybe the two will cancel each other out.
Yeah, I love those curses.
I think it would be so fascinating. I want to see how Kyle interacts with the team. Valerie says Rob sold me on Hard Knocks. Thank you, Valerie. See,
Kyle and Saleh interacting
with each other, exactly, because Kyle famously doesn't like any of that sort of motivational stuff. And Saleh does, like, his all gas, no brakes, right? That's his mantra. Do right longer. I think that came from Robert Saleh too, as a matter of fact.
I also would love to see like Saleh's authentic delivery of this positivity, because I feel like to us, obviously, it's great, but it is a little cringe cliche, as you said, all gas, no brakes, all of that. But clearly he has like a really good, consistent demeanor that actually resonates with players beyond just this generic positivity that a Russell Wilson, for example, shows. And so I would love to see the overall balance of Robert Saleh's demeanor, because I feel like we just get one part of him that he presents to the media. Same with Kyle.
Saleh walks into that room immediately having the respect of the leaders, of Fred, of Bosa. He's got those guys, like, they love him. So, like, he's not starting from scratch, like the leaders, the people that are going to set the tone for him are already in his corner. So that is a huge, huge plus. I like this comment from Ethan Parrish, who says, if Hard Knocks gave even a little insight into how the Niners negotiate, the national media would immediately flip on them. If Brock doesn't have a contract, Vish, oh my God.
With Mac Jones there?
Right. That's another thing. Did you watch the Hard Knocks with the Jets when they were negotiating with Revis? It's my all-time favorite Hard Knocks moment when they're trying to talk with Revis, and all of a sudden
Antonio Cromartie's trying to remember how many kids he has.
Well, that was the same year, yeah, I think. But no, they're negotiating with Revis, and Revis has 3 years left on his deal, and Rex he can't take it anymore. And finally, he's like, you know what? I got a game to coach. You got 3 years left on a contract. We're gonna win it without you. Watch what the bleep happens. And he walks out of the room, and Mike Tannenbaum is there, the GM, and he just stops, and no one says anything for like 5 seconds. And then he just says, all right, we'll talk to you. And he hangs up the phone, and he looks around at everybody in the room, and he just goes, well, what does the negotiation handbook say to do now, fellas? Like, that is an incredible moment. I've talked to him about it because I told him how much I loved it.
What did he say?
He was like, I didn't know what else to say. Like, what else can you do at that point? That's literally just Rex being Rex. And they got a deal done after that too. I think it would be fascinating if we got to see Parag talking with Kyle Strongen, Brock Purdy's agent. You can't tell me this wouldn't be the best show on television.
Yeah. I think the Niners would dread that. That would, I think, like, if there's many things they could dread, it would be that.
Oh, they would hate it, but that's another reason why it'll be good. Mike UA, YouTube channel member, says Jed screaming at John and Kyle, "Bank of Jed is closed, boys."
I'd love to see the personality of so many of the stars too. Like, what's their demeanor on a day to day? Like, how do they carry themselves? Like, I feel like with the Fred Warners, the Nick Bosa's, a couple of them, we have a good idea. But there's a few guys on this team that are like totally like, what do they do on a day to day? How do they carry themselves? And I'd love to see it.
Dude, you wouldn't love to see Diamondor Lenore? I bet that guy is
Oh,
hilarious.
dude, he's probably got so many great one-liners.
Yes, it would be great.
Imagine him and Brandon Ayuk competing and talking and going at it in a practice.
Seeing Fred talk crap in practice the way he, does, especially to Ayuk. Like, he kind of tormented Brandon Ayuk. Now, he probably wouldn't do it as much this year because of the injury rehab stuff, but it would still be interesting to see. Benali says we are significantly overestimating how much the media likes Purdy. If he doesn't have a deal and they're on Hard Knocks, the media narrative would be more about Brock than it would be about the Niners. I don't know, because I feel like Brock would give off that aw shucks vibe, and the 49ers would look like cheap jerks. And I feel like Brock would be getting the fan support. So I don't know if I
Yeah.
agree with Benali.
Yeah, if he doesn't have the contract and he's still coming to practice, it would be very easy to paint him as a sympathetic figure.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
quarterback who's still, like, you can already hear it with the narrator voiceover. That quarterback who still doesn't have a contract comes hard to work every day at 5:30 a.m. And there's a picture, there's Brock in his truck. Brock
Yes.
Purdy, light on him. Hey, going to practice.
His free truck that he got from Toyota with his free bag of seed that he got from his seed sponsorship in the back. That is exactly right. He's been the most underpaid quarterback for his entire career, but that won't stop Brock Purdy from showing up to work. Literally with a lunchbox, right? Thermos of coffee, driving in at 5 o'clock. You watch how fast that narrative would flip. Yep,
It'll
absolutely.
be so easy too because of the way he'll come across in the show. Like, I don't expect Brock Purdy to be anybody but kind, respectful, hardworking, competitive. Like, I expect this show, whether there's a good perception of Brock Purdy publicly or not, I don't think there's any way you can watch him up close in this show and people won't come away liking him. Brock is likable.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I don't like Brock the person. I don't know how you come away not liking him. And also, does he have meetings with Shanahan? Do they talk about the game plan, about the offense? Like, what is that like? How much input does Brock have on things? Because I think people think that sort of Kyle rules with an iron fist.
Yep.
Although when Brock,
how do they talk to each other?
When Brock has been asked about it, he has said that Kyle does value his input, but it'd be fun to actually see it. Because you're right, the way he talks to him. If he's just like, "Yeah, Brock, good suggestion," and he, kind of gives him a side eye a little bit, that would be something to react to as well. And then Jeremy, YouTube channel member, shout out to you and all our YouTube channel members, brings up a good point. They're trying to schedule joint practices with Denver. Well, who went to Denver this offseason, Vish? Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga.
Someone's getting hit in that practice.
Yes, it would be awesome. I want to see it, damn it. There's too many reasons not to do it. The NFL needs
you think Dre Greenlaw is getting a 15-yard penalty in that practice?
Or was somebody they pulled Dre aside? Hey, Dre, how'd you really feel about the Niners not doing squat until after you had already agreed to Denver and then trying to swoop in at the 11th hour? Like, yes.
The Niners should hire Big Dom to troll him.
Oh, God. They all show up with T-shirts of Big Dom.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Come on, Kittle. Let's
Dre Greenlaw, what did you think about loyalty? I was a fan of you until March 1st, my friend. And then I turned on you.
Oh, Mike says, do you think Brandon Ayuk could wear the right color shorts to practice on Hard Knocks? Who knows? What if he does do something like that after they crapped on him all year? That's what I mean. I think there would be a lot of potential drama on the show.
Oh, 100%. I hate how it's always related to Brandon Ayuk, though. I feel like Brandon Ayuk has become sympathetic to me again this offseason.
I think that they've unfairly crapped on him all offseason. I've been defending
I'm with you.
Oh, Trip Aces says Brock is likable at 45 million. See, that is so that's not happening. Okay. I said I wasn't going to talk Brock contract on the show. Damn it.
Yeah, come on, Rob.
Sorry. Did you see the thing? Because some people are putting this in the chat. They think it's like hilarious. Brock talked about how 40% of the time he's kind of throwing blind. Did you catch that on the I think it was the Built for More podcast? He talked about it, how he and Greasy would say basically as a quarterback in the NFL, 40% of the time you really can't see the receiver. What did you make of that?
I understood what he said. Unfortunately, 90% of the media reaction did not understand what he said.
So what did
I
he
think
say?
I think he's basically talking about how fast things move in the NFL and how much you're processing things. 40% of the time, you almost have to play like on instinct, like blind, where you're dropping back, foot hits the ground, and it's like on a rhythm robotic. You're just throwing that football. And I think he called it throwing blind because maybe that's how Greasy talks about it. Maybe they call it playing blind as their phrase for playing fast, getting your cleats all the way in the ground and being able to drop back and throw. The guy doesn't look like he plays blind. We watch him every Sunday. He's not Nick Mullins throwing those interceptions versus the Eagles. He knows where he's going with the football. I hate how this statement was taken out of context. I actually think it could be complimentary if you think about how difficult it is to play quarterback and the fact that he is one of those guys who's able to play that fast most of the time. It's a compliment to how well he plays the position from a fundamental standpoint. But yeah, it was completely taken out of context. And it's been the worst case of clickbait. And this is why I hate Twitter these days, Rob. And I deleted it.
I just want to throw up this video. This is Hall of Fame quarterback Steve Young. Okay, I'm just going to play this video.
I don't have the visibility, big, huge guys in front of me. And so what do? I try to move around, can't see him, and then I get sacked, and I go to the sidelines, and the coach says, hey, what happened? Jerry Rice was open. The whole team protected you. Everybody was doing this wonderful job. Why didn't you throw it? And I said, well, because I couldn't see him. And he's had the great comment that I think all upper management would say back is, well, you better start seeing him. And thanks for the tip. What I did do is realize that I have to grow. And how I grew was by throwing it without seeing, actually developing extra senses. I wasn't going to be 6'6". It wasn't going to happen for me. I was always going to be too short. But what can I do to get the job done in a different way? I'm not going to give into this. I'm not going to leave the field. I'm going to figure it out. And what I decided to do was start to throw it because I just saw him. I know where he's going. Let it rip. Some of my favorite memories of my life, my whole career, people say, what's your favorite memory? Throwing blind was my favorite memory. No one cared. Never made a headline, ever. But it was, for me, one of the most important things that I'd ever accomplished because I threw the ball blind and was successful and got better and better at it to a point where being 6'3" wasn't necessarily a negative. And because I was 6'3", I was extra fast. And so that was another benefit. And so I just use that as a metaphor for people. I tell my kids, everybody's 6 foot relative to the 6'6" people, too short.
That was a great pull from you. And I think that summarized exactly what he meant. And when he said he sees him initially and then he knows to just let it rip, that filling in the blanks is what Kyle Shanahan talks about with receivers hitting their landmarks early in their routes so quarterbacks know that they're going to be where they need to be on time and on schedule. That's the point of vision where the quarterback can see the receiver and know they're going to get to their spot and the quarterback can let it rip with trust. Great pull, Rob. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's so hilarious that people are like, oh, Brock Purdy can't see. Yeah, a lot of the times in the NFL, you can't see. It's not just Brock Purdy. And Brock even said that what he was saying applied to all quarterbacks. Now, I do think Brock sees less than some of the taller guys, like Josh Allen. Like, there's a reason that they like quarterbacks to be that tall because, yeah, they probably do see more than the guys that are shorter like Brock. That's only logical.
Same with his arm because he has to throw it a second earlier, or he always has to be on time with his arm. He can't afford to be late with it.
Yes, that's why they like a stronger arm because you can wait just that extra little bit and see just that extra little bit longer. Brock doesn't have that luxury sometimes. But I saw people reacting to that. And I get why they want to dunk on him, but I also think, like, let's try and take a realistic look at what life is like as an NFL quarterback in general. It's not like Madden where you look and you see the guys open and then you hit the button. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, he also, I feel like the context he said it with, it wasn't, this is where like writing someone's words when you don't talk how they talk. Like when you hear those words come out of Brock Purdy's mouth, they feel much more matter of fact and normal than when they're written and then someone reads them in their own voice. It's just
Okay.
how he talks, I feel like. And I think this was just one of those things that was over exaggerated thoroughly for clicks, Rob. If I had to pick a reason for you, clicks.
The clickbait, as they like to
It's
say.
the clickbait. Exactly. I'm going after the clickbaiters, but I actually think this one was like the worst case of it. I think every aggregator got this one.
Well, let me see if I can bring it up here just so we can actually hear Brock's words. This is Brock Purdy on the Built for More podcast.
So my quarterback coach, Brian Greasy, last couple of years, he and I talked about that. He played 11 years. His dad's Bob Greasy. But we got talking about how really it's 60-40. You can see about 60% of the time, and the other 40% you really can't. I mean, it doesn't matter how bigger you are.
Right.
I mean, I'm already shorter in stature, yes, but he goes, that's why it's so important when it comes down to knowing coverages, knowing scheme, where our players are supposed to be, how many steps they're breaking, and where the ball should be over a certain backer. Like all those things, man, it matters. And that's why, like, guys, you know, if you go to a combine and all those things, you're just throwing on air and yeah, you look all good with a strong arm and fast jumping, all that stuff. But when it comes down to 11 on 11 and you got guys that are a foot taller than you and you can't see, it comes down to the processing. Like before the play, like I know that the safety is probably going to rotate down. It's going to be one high and I got one hitch, no more than that, to rip it where Debo's supposed to be like just inside the hash. And there's a backer that's also got a 40-inch vert that I got to put up, you know, like
that's what's crazy.
All those things.
So that's the actual quote.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with it. Like some people like think it's a huge deal. Like I think, yeah, that's just the reality of his life at that position.
Completely matter of fact to me. I thought he was just describing to someone who might not understand some of the things he has to go through to do his job successfully. I didn't feel like listening to it as a football fan, there was nothing that made me want to pause anywhere and be like, oh, wait, he said that?
Well, and here's the thing, though, Vish. You know, first interception Brock Purdy throws next year. Oh, guess he couldn't see him. Get ready for that every time he throws.
And this is where the media fails the players, Rob, because he doesn't deserve that. He didn't even say that in a memeable way. There was nothing about what he said that was disrespectful or inconsiderate or came across like he couldn't do it. He was literally describing the reality of playing quarterback in the NFL, and the aggregators ruined it for him.
Sorry, Brock. We're trying to tell the full story on this show. Kyle Strong.
Yeah, Rob. Just follow the Gold Standard podcast, and we'll get you the right stuff, Brock. We got
there. You go. I know.
Just don't listen to us when we talk about your contract.
I know Brock's agent is out there reaching out to content creators, trying to get him to say nice things about his client. Well, we're saying a nice thing about Brock Purdy, and you haven't even contacted us. So there you go. One last thing.
He's heard you say a few negative things too, buddy.
Oh yeah? How do you know that?
Yeah. He probably watches the show. Who doesn't watch the Gold Standard Network? Come on.
That's true. If he's not, he should be. One last thing I want to get to. This isn't really Niners related per se, but I know you'll get a kick out of it. Did you see what the Commanders did today? Who they hired?
Who did they hire? Jim Tomsula?
No, they hired Wes Welker.
Oh.
Why did the Commanders hire Wes Welker?
Get Debo in shape.
Yep, they want skinny Debo. For anyone that doesn't know, Wes Welker was the Niners receiver coach when Debo Samuel was drafted. He used to run 2 miles with Debo before practice every day and 2 miles with Debo after practice every day to try and get Debo down to the weight they wanted to get him at.
Apparently he was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
He still couldn't get down to that weight, by the way, even with all the running. But that was when Debo was in his best shape with Wes Welker as the Niners receiver coach. Washington hired Wes Welker, and Debo tweeted out a picture of he and Wes standing next to each other in the Niners locker room today.
Oh, there we go. Apparently he was too much of a hard ass in Miami. That's what I was like kind of reading.
Really?
When he left. And I guess he was too much of a hard ass with the 49ers too. So maybe it's a good thing for Debo. I don't know. Leonard Hankerson seems to be very friendly with these guys. So
Interesting. I don't know.
But do you think he yells like Chris Kasarik?
you just want to dunk on Chris Kasarik because he makes a lot of money.
I do. What defensive lineman did he develop? Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw didn't play their best football with their best defensive line coach. Make that make sense.
You're not wrong. I agree with you. I do think Chris Kasarik is overrated. And the fact that he's never even been considered, on the hot seat or anything when the 49ers pass rush, other than Nick Bosa, has been a consistent issue.
It's Rob. For me, it goes beyond the pass rush. I don't know what the defensive line does, but here's something I can point to, like the Brandon Staley portion of it last year, right? Like there were portions last year where their game plan to stop people's pass games was you could see why they had Brandon Staley. They were all over teams' pass concepts. They were all over their pass game. Their corners, who they didn't have that many great corners at points last year, played to the best of their abilities. When is the 49ers, when was they having a creative rush plan at any point last year? Even when they had their A1 defensive line with Collins and Hargrave and Bosa, there was never any stunts, any creativity, something to make the quarterback uncomfortable just with your rush plan. Where has that been with Chris Kasarik? What does he do?
I don't know. He yells. That's all I know.
That's what he does. And they take good videos of him for yelling.
Right. And the players like him. Like, I'm sorry. If your reason for getting rid of a coach is they're too much of a hard ass, like I feel like you just pull that guy aside in a room and tell him to take it down a couple notches. You don't let that guy go. You don't.
No. I think like he didn't get along with like Tyreek Hill. Like they didn't like him because of that, I guess.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that's true. That was what Miami said, not San Francisco. But I hope that all the players are not buddy with you. You're not supposed to be buddy with your coach. Your coach is your boss. Okay,
dude. Wes Welker was bred in like old school New England, and like he was a grinder in old school New England. I don't think he's cut out to coach, Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek Hill probably doesn't need to do everything Wes Welker needed to do to dominate on Sundays. But so that probably pisses Wes Welker off, because you want to talk about one of the biggest chips on their shoulders. Wes Welker had a huge chip as a player.
That's true. But what if Tyreek Hill did do that, right? Imagine how good he could be if he did do all that stuff. That is, what do they say? Talent
or he just tells upper management, fire this guy and get me a new wide receivers coach.
Yeah, that too. What do they always say? Talent is the floor and work ethic is the ceiling, right?
Well, Wes Welker broke through his ceiling like 3 different times in terms of what he became in the NFL.
Better player than Julian Edelman, though nobody ever brings it up because Edelman
You think so?
Yes.
I thought Welker was a little bit of a product of Brady, if that makes sense, like their connection, the route running and all of that. I always thought Edelman had a little bit of athleticism and run after the catch ability that was isolated from anything else the Patriots did. Like they could throw the ball to Edelman on like a quick screen and he could pick up 8 to 10 yards just because his run after the catch was good. But
Edelman was Edelman was more physical for sure. He was a very physical player, especially for a guy his size.
I mean, come on, Rob. You know what he was suspended for? The guy was shredded.
Dude, Wes Welker led the NFL in catches 3 times. Okay. He had 50 touchdowns in his career. Julian Edelman had 36 touchdowns in his whole career. Wes Welker was a dude.
Yeah. He outproduced him for sure. I'm just talking like pound for pound in their role. I always like the guy who can give you a little more juice with the ball in his hand. So I thought Edelman always had a little more there.
And of course, Edelman, phenomenal in the playoffs. Massive games.
Good punt return. Both were good punt returners, actually.
Yeah. I always like both of those guys. But anyway, we don't need to reminisce about short white wide receivers any longer. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Please like and subscribe.
You don't want to talk Joe Hastings?
No, thank you. No Trent Taylor discussion on the show allowed. Like and subscribe to the show, please, to the YouTube channel. Anywhere you get audio podcasts, give us a follow. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Pods. We are here every single day. If this is your first time checking out the Gold Standard, thank you. Please give us a piece of your time. I promise you we won't let you down. Vish, I'm very excited to come to Chicago next week and meet you. I can't wait.
I'm very excited for you to enjoy the Windy City, Rob.
I will, except for the pizza. That's nasty, and I ain't having it. Goodbye.
Lasagna with